I said to draw where Jews live. This is just a stupid picture in my head.
Yeah, that's where we live.
So Jojo Rabbit is a story that uses the perspective of a child trying to be an adult to show how childish adults are when it comes to everything, specifically politics. And it explores this by focusing everything on the psychological domain of how we interpret the world around us through the lens of what culture we inherit. This is not about how values are chosen but are provided to us.
Yuck.
So the purpose of this essay is to examine the theme of imagination and how it develops throughout the story of Jojo Rabbit.
As usual.
And how are we doing? Terribly. I'm only friends with the Japanese, and just between you and me, they don't look very Aryan.
So how do we define the idea of the nation? There's two general typologies that dominate this area of study. The primordial view, which defines it as a natural and objective process, crucially linked to language, religion, territory, and ethnicity. As Anthony Smith defined, these are called ethnic cores. But then there's the constructivist approach, which looks at the nation more as a human project, an edifice subjectively developed by people. Benedict Anderson's imagined community tends to be the most famous when it comes to this thesis, because he argued that the shared strong feeling of solidarity and unity is ultimately imaginary. There's no way to possibly meet everyone in the country you live in, but you can imagine what a fellow member of it is like because you know everyone shares the same values, practices, and traditions.
You're my second best friend. First place is reserved for the Führer. So unless you're Hitler, hiding in a fat little boy's body, I'd be happy with second place.
Jojo Rabbit subscribes to the constructivist approach because
Adolf
is literally an imaginary figure in Jojo's mind, as accurate to reality as an imaginary friend in a child's connection to an unrealistic dream.
Ooh, I gotta go. We're having unicorn for dinner at my place tonight. Concentrate, Jojo.
The character is not only used as a subject of mockery, but is used as Jojo's psychological tool to appropriate reality, however unpolitical it is, into becoming symbolic of a political conflict.
Don't worry about it. I couldn't care less.
But now they call me a scared rabbit.
Let them say whatever they want.
One of the scenes that expresses this position is after Jojo is mocked for not being able to kill a rabbit. He then finds solace in his imaginary friend's words because he highlights how his actions relate to the community.
The humble little bunny faces a dangerous world every day, hunting carrots for his family, for his country. My empire will be full of all animals.
There's a great comfort and unity in imagining others that are like him, and that shared sense of connection is where the value is. But this imagined community is a framework that's very top-down in its perspective. What about looking at this process from the bottom up? Jojo Rabbit shifts gears overtly when he's no longer involved with the youth training camp and is effectively isolated from the wider cultural community. We enter his home. We enter the private sphere.
Hi.
And this is where we find a small Jewish girl hiding inside. Her vision of the nation is significantly different to Jojo's, and her identification with her group is also radically different to Jojo's too.
And something worse, but I think you already know that, don't you? You know what I am. Say it!
A Jew.
The national narratives are fragmented, and now there is a struggle to try and make sense of the shared imaginative interests. As Duncan Bell defined, this bottom-up perspective is called national mythscapes, a discursive realm constituted by and through temporal and spatial dimensions in which the myths of the nation are forged, transmitted, reconstructed, and negotiated. In other words, people think differently, and people involved in the same nation can have contested perspectives, which for the story is embodied both by Elsa and Jojo's mother, Rosie.
They'll never win. That's the power you have. As long as there's someone alive somewhere, then they lose.
and JoJo has to constantly negotiate their differences. Elsa contributes to his book on Jewish people, and actually culturally appropriates many of these myths as a place of empowerment.
Weak Jews. I am descended from those who wrestle angels and kill giants. We were chosen by God. You were chosen by pathetic little men who can't even grow a full mustache.
Therefore, this reworking of the dominant national rhetoric becomes effectively the enemy of JoJo's imaginary friend. They're both powerful in influencing each other, and just as invisible and imaginary as the other.
Look, just all the time you two are spending together, it's making me feel very uncomfortable.
You suggested it in the first place.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did.
Fighting for the same discursive space in JoJo's mind. Elsa's role is effectively a messenger for an opposing set of imaginative values, and as a result it shows us that an aspect of the national heritage requires forms of self-productions of meaning. We're not all ideologically powerless to the values around us. And then there's JoJo's mother, Rosie. She's a member of the German nation, a mother that is respected and is loving of her son, but is against the cultural values around her secretly.
The Reich is dying. We're going to lose the war, and then what are you going to do?
She homes a Jewish girl in her house secretly, clearly using her as a means to deal with the loss of her own daughter, and she has dialogues with herself, as she performs like her missing husband to look after JoJo.
And while I'm gone, I need you to take care of my Rosie.
There's a division between how she performs herself publicly and how she thinks privately, and that space where the contrast is ultimately the dead end that stunts the power of the national imagination. There can never truly be a singular centralized discourse, but only a fragmented collection of viewpoints. This is also where the majority of the supporting cast comes in. Everyone is used to show that not everyone is all bad. No matter what the imaginary rhetoric says, at the end of the day, everyone are just simply subjects to the values around them. Captain Klesendorf looks out for JoJo and his mother.
Hey, it's okay, kid.
Yorkie is JoJo's best friend. Ram is a likable person to JoJo. Everyone is friendly in JoJo's world, and this embeds a division. And that's where JoJo finds his wings, after his mother dies and after the Allies win, and despite wanting to stay in the domain of the abstract and imaginary, he chooses to cross the threshold and divide himself. He kicks his imaginary friend out the window and he walks out with Elsa to dance. National identity is a narrative of the self, the story we tell about the self in order to know who we are. And Jojo Rabbit is a story that portrays this as a process, not a destination. Who we are the results that we produce, not the rhetoric we identify with. And this is encompassed with the act of dancing, an expression of pure, private freedom. Rosie and JoJo danced early in the film as a means to reconcile after an argument about the nation. And in the end, JoJo dances with Elsa to reconcile with himself and the world. Taika Waititi is a bit of a strange director because he's got an incredibly sharp set of creative instincts that in Jojo Rabbit is used to navigate through an incredibly harsh terrain of ideas with a friendly, jovial attitude. This is important because it used the cynicism of this topic to show the hopeful and friendly realities of people, as kind and foolish as we all are. And that, at the heart of it, ironically allows us, as the audience, to imagine a community too. One that finds solidarity in something as simple as dancing.